everyone. Welcome to the BSB Bookathon Fall Edition. Thank you for tuning in for Dark and Twisty. I am your moderator, Barbara Ann Wright, and my panelists will not be talking about what they want in a girlfriend. They will be talking about plot twists. So those are dark and twisty and nothing else. So I'm going to ask my panelists to introduce themselves and answer my first question, which is, how do you define a plot twist? Take it away, Radclyffe.
Hi, everybody. I'm Radclyffe. I write romantic intrigue, romantic suspense, romantic paranormal as L.L. Rand, and contemporary romance. For me, a plot twist is something unanticipated. It can be almost anything that the reader doesn't expect. A lot depends on the genre that you're writing. So I would say it's a right angle turn that came out of nowhere that the readers thought they knew the answer, and it turns out that they didn't.
All right, cool. Sam.
Hi, I'm Sam Ledel. A little bit about me. I'm originally from Texas. I currently live in Southern California. I have 3 books published with Bold Strokes Books. And to answer the question, a plot twist for me is anything when I'm reading a book that makes me look up and say, whoa, I did not see that coming.
That's cool. The definable and the indefinable. I love all those. Anne. So,
Hi.
just as you put your headphones in.
That's right. I'm Anne. Thanks everyone for being here. Glad to be here myself. And I write crime fiction, and my most recent title, Money Creek, just came out last month. And I define a plot twist as certainly what the others have said, that which is unexpected. So I would say something like Alice drove to the store in her Lexus is plot, but Alice drove to the store in her Lexus and the brakes went out is a plot twist. So, you know, just anything that adds that extra juice, I think, to the story in an unexpected way is a plot twist.
Cool. I don't think people are going to accept the whole novel as she drives in her Lexus to the store, but I do understand what you're saying there. Eden.
So I'm Eden Darry. I've got a book coming out, or I think it's out with Bold Strokes already, and then everywhere else on the 13th of October called Z-Town. And I've got 3 books published, and I live in the UK. Plot twist. Yeah, I think everyone's pretty much covered the plot twist. I don't think I've got anything clever to add yet. It's just something that you're not expecting as a reader, and I think as well it's something that really sort of keeps your interest as well, because when you don't know where something's going, you want to keep reading.
You can't copy other people's answers. That's how I trick people into wanting to go first. Maggie, can you tell us anything new?
I can tell you nothing new at all. My name is Maggie Cummings. I live in New York. I have 2 kids, I have a day job, and just to keep things interesting, I write romance on the side in my spare time and to add a little stress to my life in case it wasn't stressful enough. But I don't have anything interesting to add in terms of plot twists. I think it's anything that's unexpected, pretty much like everyone.
Yeah, it's just terrible. Terrible answers there at
Very
the last. Might have to kick y'all off the panel. Okay, let's go with something different here. Do you use a lot of plot twists in your work? And do you have to plan them and write them all down, or screw it, you just write off the cuff? And who looks like they want to answer this? Sam looks like she wants to answer.
Thank you. You know, when I was thinking about my answers to some of these potential questions, I was thinking I didn't really use very many, but then I kind of went back through, in particular, my trilogy that I currently have, 2 of which are available now. And while I don't necessarily utilize a lot of, plot twists, there are several reveals, which I guess could be maybe a subcategory of a plot twist, that I was surprised by the number of them that I had. And so I suppose I do use a fair amount, somewhere in the middle. Don't really know what the exact number would be. And in terms of planning, I began by not planning as much as I should have. I realized very quickly that, especially with a trilogy, I'm going to need to plot some things out. And sometimes the twist or the reveals that I did have in mind didn't pan out because they didn't make sense in the plot. So it was a mix, which ended up leaning more towards the needing to plan more than anything, so that everything would make sense.
Yeah, I definitely feel your pain there, especially in fantasy sci-fi if you're going to write a really long story. Because if you put something in there that you didn't hint at before and you're like, no one will catch that, yeah, they're going to catch that. Radclyffe, what about you?
I think that we most conventionally think about plot twists in mysteries, and I'm going to leave the mystery part to Anne because she's the mystery writer. But in my Justice series, which is as close to mystery as I get, which is really a police procedural series, I think in books like that, the plot twists are when you lead the readers to believe, and particularly in a procedural, that the bad guys are certain individuals, and it turns out that they're not. I mean, I think that's the most classic plot twist, and I certainly do think about that when I'm writing that kind of book. I don't plot anything, except when I was writing the Justice series, I would keep a pad of paper next to me and I would write down 20 things that had to happen in the book in generally chronologic order, because I didn't want to forget them because they were sort of like important points in the plot. But that's all I did. It was kind of like, you know, they catch the bad guy here, the bad guy gets away, they find out somebody else did it. That's the extent to which I plot anything.
I do kind of the same thing, except my list is people who might die.
Yeah, that too.
I like keeping track of that one. Yeah. Well, Anne, tell us about mysteries.
Yeah, well, I do use a lot of plot twists because I think for any crime writer, plot twists are you know, the hammer to the carpenter. It's what people come to a mystery book to get is the twists and turns in the plot. And so do I write them? I mean, I wish I was a little better about knowing what the plot twists are. When I start a book, I've heard it described as tent poles, and I basically will know what the tent poles are, and those are the 3 or 4 or 5 plot turning points that keep the book up, that frame the book. And I generally have maybe 2 or 3 of those in mind, and then I work toward those in a somewhat organized way, but not beyond that. So I was just going to add about plot twists in the mystery novel. I think that it's not only the thing that propels the plot itself, but the plot twists are the thing that propels the character and gives us so much of the characterization, because the plot twists are what stress the protagonist, and we want to stress the protagonist as much as possible and see how they rise to the occasion. So plot twists kind of have a dual purpose, I think, in the mystery.
I really like that answer. I've never looked at it that way. Maggie.
You know, just to kind of carry off of what Anne was just saying, I don't write a lot of mysteries or a lot of, I write some police procedural stuff, but not involving a lot of plot twists. But I think what Anne just said about plot twists sort of showing character depth and how they react to what they find out later on. I tend to use a little bit plot twists more in the romance portions of my writing, so that there's something unexpected that happens in the relationship or in one of the characters' pasts. And I think it's really interesting the way Anne put it, that's what, I don't think I realized that that's why I did it, although I think that that's why I do it, is to show character depth and to show growth in terms of how they react and how they sort of move forward and deal with this new information that they maybe didn't have in the past that might be as part of the conflict and how the relationship like sort of works out. But I think that it's really important to sort of see that. I think that's what we relate to as readers and as writers, is to see characters sort of be given things they didn't expect and see how they overcome those things and how they, their relationship kind of blossoms or develops and who they lean on and how they kind of even use some of their internal stuff to sort of get through things. And I think that's why it's important. I think probably all of our lives in many ways have plot twists in one way or other of things that we didn't really see coming. And so I think it's interesting, and that's sort of the reason why I think I put them in stories. I'm sure why other people do too.
I think we could deal with a few less plot twists right now in all
Yeah.
of our lives. Eden.
Yeah, so I guess the books I write are kind of like horror suspense type books. So plot twists, I think, are quite important in, because you're sort of in the read, you're trying to create like a sense of like anticipation and keep them on their toes. So that's quite a good way of doing it, I find, because, you know, if you sort of bring something out of left field, it just keeps things off balance. So yeah, so I do try and utilize them. Not too much, because I think too many and maybe it all starts to become a bit complicated, and I'm quite a simple creature, but but yeah, I do try and I consciously bring them in, and I think about beforehand like what I can do to maybe kind of shock people or surprise them, or, you know, just to keep people interested.
That's cool. Well, when you're making your plot twists, what sort of teasers or breadcrumbs do you employ? Do you like to leave little clues? Do you like to have a bunch of red herrings? Do you want your plot twist to be a complete surprise? And then on the tail end of that, do you hope your readers can figure them out before they're coming? Or do you want to just keep them up at late at night reading to try and figure it out? And Maggie, you haven't answered first.
Sure, I'll go ahead. In terms of like breadcrumbs or like teasers that I leave, I will do a couple of things, definitely, but I wouldn't call them necessarily, I don't want anything to be a complete surprise. I think what I'm aiming for is that while I'm writing the plot, that the reader isn't picking up along the way like, oh, this is going to lead to something, but rather when they do get to the reveal, that they kind of go back and be like, oh, right, this is why all the puzzle pieces fit. So it's more of like a subtle lead up to it. So it's kind of like more of like a surprise, but in the same way you're kind of trusting that your readers are going to figure it out on their own, and that they don't need a whole bunch of like big, and I'm not really good at it, by the way. I have to like write a lot of stuff down, and then inevitably I go back, like when I'm editing or whatever, and I'm like, oh my God, I revealed too much. Oh my God, I forgot to put this in too. And then it kind of all works out, because, you know, I don't know. It just does. You make corrections, or you realize that the thing you thought you wrote, you really didn't. That was all just in your head. So I don't know that I think I'm still a work in progress in terms of getting it right. But that's sort of what my goal always is.
That's all right. We're all works in progress. It's fine. If it does that, I don't think we'd be alive anymore, and that would be terrible.
True.
Eden.
So it depends. So some of them, I'll try and leave a couple of clues. Nothing. I try not to make it too obvious, but I might put a few things in towards the beginning so that I can kind of refer back to it, or it sort of sets it up for me further down the line. And then some of them I like to just kind of do out of the blue, you know, with no warning or anything, and hopefully that works.
And a scary story, I think so.
Yeah, I think you've got to be a bit careful, because I guess they're not like mysteries where I'm not sort of building like a twisty turny necessarily. It's more kind of like bang, bang, bang. So yeah, so like I said, there'll be some where I try and kind of like lay some foundations near the beginning for what I'm going to do later on. But yeah, sometimes it's nice to just have them come out of the blue and just sort of, yeah, just for, like I say, just to keep people on their toes, or try. That is my intention. Whether it does or not, I don't know.
I think so. I've read your work. I think it works.
Thank you.
What about you, Rad?
I wanted to comment on something that both Sam and Maggie mentioned, and that's the reveal. As a romance writer, it's not really a plot twist, but there is generally something with one or both characters that is the foundation for how they relate to one another and how they see the world. And in my work, it's very often something that the reader doesn't know right away, but you can't pretend it's not there. You have to let the reader know that there's something going on. And that's really, those are the breadcrumbs that you develop during characterization, that you show the character backing away from something, having a reaction that's unexpected, so that the reader says, you know, what's going on with them? There's something that the reader doesn't know. They know it's there and it's causing that character to behave in a certain way. And ultimately, at some point, the reveal has to happen for the reader and the other character in a romance at the same time. That's one of your major scenes, is the reveal. And it always has to happen with the other character, not out, you know, in isolation, or not with the best friend, or not with the boss. The reveal has to be with the other character, because that's an incredible moment in the romance arc. So that, it's not exactly a twist, but it's definitely a driving force in the book.
So kind of like, they may not pick up on these, you know, you're not going to have to drop very obvious clues, because subconsciously the reader's going along with you the whole time.
I think that you can be subtly obvious, meaning you can't be so heavy-handed that the reader is like, you know, they know that there's something very deep and dark going on. But from the very beginning, there has to be almost like this little shell around the character that is keeping them from doing everything they would like to do, or that they are feeling what they would like to feel. I mean, that's really the barrier that causes the conflict in a romance, is that thing, whatever it is. And that's, you know, that's kind of like the driving force in any romance. If it's not there, the readers aren't going to be all that interested in finding out how they get together. Does that make sense?
I think so. You've never had a complete surprise. I mean, I know you've never done this one, but like, actually, you know, turns out character B is a squid. You know, I know you've never done that one specifically, but have you ever had one that was just like,
I don't know,
boom?
but it's a really good idea. Not really, because I think if you do, it's not as believable. I mean, you just can't drop something. It's like Deus Ex Machina in a, you know, spec fic. All of a sudden they have a power that they never had before, because they have to have the power. So you can't really do that in a romance either. You have to build up to it so that it's believable. I'm thinking about, I probably shouldn't say, should I? Love on the Night Shift.
Spoilers.
But I just published that this year, and probably nobody's read it, so I won't say anything about that one.
So you have to read it. Read it and decide for yourself. Hey, and Laughlin, what do you think?
Hey, well, I think, and Red touched on this, that, and others did as well, that it's not fair to the reader to have, at the very end of the book, somebody drop in from out of the blue who's never been in the book before, or, you know, some marvelous invention suddenly appears and, you know, saves everything. So, I remember, I don't know if it was Patricia Cornwell who did that, or somebody, I remember reading somebody who was quite well known who did that, and I thought, that just doesn't feel fair. Because I actually, I like to fool my reader. I don't particularly want my reader to figure out, because it's a mystery book. So that's, you know, that you're kind of going for that end punch. And so I don't particularly want them to figure it out, but I do leave at least one or two specific clues that I put in there, that if somebody was extremely observant and their thought processes happen to go a certain way during the reading of the book, they might put it together, but not obvious at all. I mean, as a reader, my experience reading mystery books is I'm not trying to ferret out clues. I'm really just letting the experience wash over me and enjoying the clues as they come to me. And I don't want to make it work. So hopefully, in reading my book, people are having kind of the same experience.
I do the same thing. And I always tell people that if you're writing a mystery and you don't want it to be obvious and I figure out who the murderer is, it's too obvious. What about you, Sam?
Well, I really enjoyed everybody's comments on that, and something that was said kind of reminded me of this image that popped into my head when I was thinking about plot twists, which was just this really big grand house. And when I'm reading a story, I apologize if there's background noise suddenly. If I'm reading a story, it's kind of like opening the front door to the house. And you sort of walk in, and, you know, the foyer, whatever the geographical term is for that front part of the house, is where you get to start to know the story. And each room that you see is sort of, you know, branches off from that. It's the world building, it's the characters, it's the characters' actions, their hopes, their dreams, what drives them. And for me, a plot twist is kind of like, you know, you've gone into those rooms and you've kind of seen some things and learned some things about the world or the characters, and it's opening another door inside of that room to let you into another level of it. Something that, going back to the whole reveal thing. And it also makes sense because it's a part of those rooms. It's a part of that world and those characters. So for me, that's kind of the hardest thing with plot twists, is I always want to make sure it makes sense within the story and with the characters' actions. It's still contained within what we already know. It, you know, it expands upon it, or it, you know, reveals a new layer, but it still makes sense. So leaving those breadcrumbs to me is fun and something I enjoy doing. Don't know if I'm great at it yet, but I like to try to do it. With the trilogy, for example, there's this kind of running theme of luck in the trilogy, and characters mention it throughout the trilogy, and you know, sort of kind of dropping that's going to come into play somehow as the trilogy progresses. So I do like to leave the breadcrumbs as a reader. I'm one of those probably obnoxious readers who likes to guess at everything and be like, oh, this is who the murderer is.
Yeah, they're totally the murderer. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I do
You've
that.
guessed everybody. Yeah.
Yes, every few pages though. So it's I'm probably irritating to murder mystery writers, but I greatly admire them because I think the skill and the plotting that has to go into that is just, it's mind blowing to me. So I admire people who can do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you said before, Sam, about you wrote yourself into a corner one time with a breadcrumb or a reveal, and you were like, well, that's not going to work. Has that happened any other time besides in your trilogy, or did it only happen the once?
Oh no, it happened multiple times. There were lots of things that I was like, okay, this is what's going to happen at this point, and I get you know really excited about it. I start writing toward that plot twist, and then I sit back and reread everything and think, oh my goodness, that just can't be. That just doesn't make sense to the world or to the characters. The character wouldn't make that decision. They wouldn't do this. It's too far out in left field. So yeah, it happens many times, but I like to think that every time I do that, I'm learning something from it and getting better.
Well, sure. How about you, Rad? Have you ever written yourself into a corner with a plot twist and had to back out again?
I don't think that's ever happened to me because I don't actually write like classic plot twists in that regard. I've had what Maggie referred to. My characters develop as I write them. And the more I write the book, the more the characters develop and the more I know about the characters. And sometimes I'll realize a motivation or realize the strength of a particular motivation for a particular character and realize that I haven't foregrounded it quite enough. And usually I know that probably about the 30% mark, because by then the characters are well developed and the plot is moving right along. And I'll think, I really haven't put in enough up front to make this part as believable as it should be. And usually that's a really easy edit. It's usually not a lot, you know, maybe a little bit more in a conversation, maybe a little bit of insight. You know, a character thinks a certain thing, a line or two at a certain point. So it's pretty easy, if you know the characters well, to just go back and drop in another layer of complexity early on. And I do that sort of automatically as I write. I'll read the previous chapter, and when I'm at about 25%, which is about the end of the first act, I'll pretty much know if I've got the characters well-founded or not. And if not, I can touch that up pretty fast.
You're probably going to have to do that a lot if you go with She's a Squid story.
Yeah,
That could be a lot.
Yeah, there's going to be like
a lot of cleaning up.
There's going to be more water stuff up front.
Yes, a lot of ink around her house, just laying here and there. All right, Anne, have you written yourself into a corner, and how did you back out?
I have written myself to the end of a draft and realized that maybe a pretty big premise is just absurd and I'm going to have to change it. And to me, it's the equivalent of writing myself into a corner. I've kind of committed and came up short. So I've had to, depending on what that problem is and where in the book it is, the change can be relatively minor, as Rad was talking about, or it can be, I mean, I've had one where I really had to rip up the manuscript and rewrite a lot. So that was a lot. That was a lot of work.
That hurts me just to hear it.
Yeah, that was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And part of it is that I'm in a writing group now, and with two other writers who are very, very good, and they workshop my stuff and they point out things that I wouldn't have seen. And then what do? You have to do something to make the book better.
You make excuses to the people who are expecting the book. That's what you do.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I forgot what the overall topic of the question was, but no, that was so long ago.
You answered it, though. You did it. It's good. Okay.
All right, good.
Yeah. All right. Eden, in case you've forgotten, have you ever written yourself to a corner, and how did you get out?
I don't think I've ever written myself into a corner. I like to I plan, except for this time currently, I plan it, what I'm going to write, so I kind of have like an idea of each scene and everything before. Sometimes I've had to change stuff because I like to kill people off. And sometimes I can get a little bit trigger happy, and so I have to bring them back. Or but yeah, no, I mean, I guess I can let you know next time with this current one, because I'm writing it as I go to kind of see how that goes.
Okay. Well, for the next panel you do, I hope you have an answer for this question, because you will be graded.
Yeah.
Maggie.
I think more what I'm guilty of is sort of like planning myself into a corner. So at the beginning of like planning it out, or beginning of writing, I'll say, well, in my head, I know these things are going to happen at these points to these characters. And then, I had always, before I had written anything, I would go to like readings and things like that. And writers are always talking about how the character did something that they didn't expect. And I'm like, what are these people talking about? The characters, like, you wrote the characters, that doesn't happen. And then once you start to write, you realize that these characters sort of develop personalities, and you find that who you thought they were in the beginning isn't necessarily who they are by the 30% or 50% mark. And so where I'll have something planned out where this is going to happen A, B, C, and D, at this point, I realize that once the story is actually on the page, what I thought a character would do just isn't in that character's nature anymore. So then I've got to sort of like pivot mid manuscript and realize, well, what would the reaction they would have be, or what would they do in this scenario? So it's more, I mean, I guess in a way it's writing myself into a corner, but I sort of see the headlights really far in the distance, and I have enough time, hopefully, to sort of change it around. So I think that's more what I'm guilty of.
Yeah, as long as you don't start talking about them like they're real people, I think you'd be okay. Like if you're like, hey, I have to buy them a Christmas present, then we're going to worry about you.
We're not supposed to do that?
We're already, okay, well, we'll start worrying now then. Okay, we have some questions for specific people on the panel, but if anyone else has an opinion, feel free to jump in. This one is about mystery and crime books, so I think we're mostly talking to Anne here, but if anyone else has a thought. So Anne, do mystery and crime books have to have red herrings, and can you have too many?
I think you definitely can have too many. That would just, I mean, you don't want to have a ping pong effect with your reader where they're just bouncing from one twist to another. I think that's a mistake, that you have to give some pause in between action, and to give too many clues. I don't know. I think it's packs less punch than a few well-placed clues, is my opinion.
Okay, does anyone else have an opinion on red herrings? Who wants to jump in there? Mystery and crime.
I agree with Anne. I mean, I think that in most mysteries, and I read a lot of mysteries, although I don't write mystery, you will be led to believe that a certain perpetrator is the one that everybody's after. And that is usually the primary red herring. And at some point, Anne, you can probably elucidate this even more. Somewhere around 60 or 70%, it turns out that your primary investigator begins to have enough evidence that it is in fact this person. And then where in the romance you would have the crisis moment, generally in a mystery, it turns out it isn't that person. And they have to reevaluate everything they know and look at all the clues again and go in a different direction. And I think that you're probably only going to have, early on, you'll have a bunch of suspects and you could consider them red herrings. But ultimately, you are led to believe that it's going to be character B. And it turns out, in fact, it usually isn't. You think that's right, Anne?
I think that's right, but I think, I think there are so many different plots now in crime fiction.
Yeah.
They're so all over the place that classic setup probably are seeing it less and less. But I do think that the misdirection is a big part of crime writing, and to send your reader down the wrong alley is part of the fun. I think you just have to be cognizant of not having them run around too much, and take some of the pleasure out of the reading of the book.
Yeah, I think you're right. Now that I think about it, I mean, the domestic thrillers, which are so incredibly popular now,
right,
are really much different than the classic mystery structure that you're used to. I've been just re-listening to all of John Sanford's books because I've been listening to them while I'm running.
Yeah.
And John Sanford is amazing. But I can see that structure in his work, especially his early work, almost in every book. Because they're very classic sort of mystery police procedurals. But I think what we're seeing today is suspense and mystery is very different. You're right.
So this question is directed to Rad, and I will try to put all the enthusiasm of this question that's written. Rad, I love all your books. You read books too. This person looks forward to reading the other authors, but wants to ask Radclyffe, what is your crime or thriller book that you thought was a game changer in storytelling?
Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Barbara, for the rendition. Can I look at the question? No, I guess I can't.
Yeah, you can.
That I've written that I think is a game changer. I don't think anything I've written is a game changer. I mean, I'm a genre writer. I love genre structure. I don't try to be super adventurous. I think that my Justice series introduced some interesting things that weren't common at the time. I started writing it in the, do I have to say this? In the late 1990s. I have genderqueer characters from the beginning of the series, which was not very common then. And so I think that I'm very, for me, it was just very instinctual and natural to write those characters. But that's been something that I think has made that series distinct, perhaps. But I don't think it's changed anything.
Well, how about a game changer for yourself where you were like, okay, this is the best work that I have done and I'm never going to top it, so I should retire. No, anything where you're like this one, I loved writing this book. I think it's great.
Well, I can tell you that the book I should have quit after is Fated Love, because if you ever ask anybody what their favorite book is, that's the one they say. And I wrote it in 2005, so I should have just quit then.
I always tell people the fastest way to get you in somewhere is to tell you that gay fiction is not allowed there. And then you'll be like, I'm coming in.
Yeah. My first book is still my best-selling book.
I think that happens to a lot of people. And then you're like,
it is kind of
thank
depressed.
you so much, buy the other ones. But yeah, I think that happens to a lot of people. Well, let's ask everybody else here. Sam, what's your favorite thing that you've written that you're like, oh, I love this book?
Of my books or of something in the books?
No, of your books. I don't think you've written anybody else's books, but if you have, you can DM me after this because I want to know. Favorite.
I actually ghostwrite for everybody here. No. Totally kidding. I mean, I'm proud of myself for writing the trilogy that I've written, just because I'd never done anything like that before. And to be able to carry the storylines through to where I wanted to see them. I mean, the third one's not out yet. We'll see how that one goes. But I really enjoyed writing Broken Rain, the newest release. I was able to put a lot of things in there. I think a lot of times with the second installation of a trilogy is kind of the more action-packed one, where you get to have kind of the fun adventure in between setting everything up and concluding everything. So that one I really enjoyed writing a lot.
Maggie?
I don't know that I would call it a game changer, but I do feel like with each thing that I write, it isn't like a novel thought, but I do see.
Uh-oh, I think we might have lost Maggie
Mm-hmm.
temporarily. All right, till we get her back, Eden, would you like to answer?
Yeah, so probably the one that's out now, Z-Town. I had a lot of fun writing that book. Not that I didn't have fun writing the others, but I think because I guess it's only my third, for Bold Strokes, I think I'm sort of finding it coming more naturally, maybe because you kind of know sort of where you're going with things and stuff, and I enjoyed it. Yeah, it was fun. I mean, zombies are one of my favourite things, and you can you can be as gory as you like and as ridiculous as you like. So
And
I
if
think,
you end up killing too many people, hey,
yeah, it
they
doesn't
can just
matter,
be
does it?
zombies. They'll come right back.
yeah, I killed a lot of people in that book, and no one said I couldn't, so that was good.
Yeah, well, I would think that too many people die is not really a criticism you'd get in a zombie
No.
book. Hopefully they'd know going in.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot
yeah.
of widespread death. Yeah, which there was. So, yeah, no, it was just fun. It was a lot of fun to write. Whereas I think maybe I worried a bit more with the first two, or I was kind of quite. They were just different books. Whereas this one was, it was just fun, and I could be silly and do silly things. So yeah, that was probably my game changer book.
Well, while I've got you, what advice would you give to people who want to write a plot that's really kind of twisty?
You want me to answer that?
I do.
What do well, I suppose for me personally, it would be plan it out. I've got this terrible fear of writing myself into a corner with something. All of that work to get to a point, and then you have to go back and unravel, and so for me personally, it would be plan it, and I guess work out where all the threads go and how they come together. But I know some people aren't planners and will just sort of write and hope that it all comes together. I mean, I think there is an element of spontaneity. I don't think you can kind of write that rigidly, but yeah, I think if I was writing something with a lot of twists and turns, or at least know where it's going.
I love cutting my manuscript. I love cutting other people's manuscripts. I have people that's death for them. I like to cut it out of there. I don't know why. I think it's because my first novel was, in the first place, was just a succession of kidnappings. So I had to cut a whole lot of it. So now I'm just in love with it. Okay, what were we talking about? Oh, what your advice for people who'd like to write twisty fiction? How about you, Rad?
I think that if you really want to write a true plot twist, meaning that you're going to create something that's unanticipated, there's an abrupt turn, that you are going to have to plan it out. I don't think you need to do that in every book where you're going to create anticipation or questions in the reader's mind. I think that's very often an issue of character. I think that the answer to almost everything in any book is know your characters. I think that at the heart of every plot is the character. Whether you're, obviously if you're writing a mystery, there have to be significant plot points, but the character is the thread that connects them all. So I think that that's the most important thing that you always need to know, no matter what you're writing, is know your characters first.
Okay, Anne?
Yeah, I think the advice about plotting things out is well taken, but as Erin said, it's not everyone is a planner. So I'm kind of right in the middle. I call myself a plantster. I mean, I kind of I plot some, but I write by the seat of my pants too. So what I found works for me in terms of constructing a twisty plot is and I think Maggie referred to the headlights earlier, and there's that famous quote by E.L. Doctorow about not knowing what he was going to write. It's the equivalent of how far you can see on a dark road with the headlights on. And that's basically how I write. So I'll know 6 to 10 scenes I have, you know, kind of lightly summarized, pretty well fixed in my brain. And then I write through those scenes. And while I'm doing that, I'm adding scenes on behind it. So I don't, it certainly is planning as you go. I'm not completely in the minute. I have to know what's going on in front, but not in detail and not to the end of the book. So it's some kind of middle ground that I work in.
And as long as it works for you, it's great.
Yeah, that it does work for me. And somehow the twists and stuff come to me that way. I think a little better than they would if I had the huge whiteboard in front of me and was trying to plan out a whole novel. I don't know. That's just me.
No, I think it sounds good. And I think the dark road in the headlines is very apropos for a mystery writer. And then you're like, sometimes I don't look, and that's when you turn the headlights off and hit somebody.
Yeah.
Maggie, if we have you back, what advice would you give to people who want to write fiction with a lot of twists?
Well, she's on the fritz again.
Oh, okay. Well, how about you, Sam? You can go first, and then we'll come back to Maggie.
Well, I mean, I agree with what everybody has said so far. I think just making sure that all the other, you know, I think somebody used the word threads, within the story are captivating enough so that you are able to not necessarily distract, but you've engaged your readers so much with what you have thus far that when the plot twist does come, it's unexpected, like we've all said it hopefully is to some extent. So I think of Sarah Waters Fingersmith as one of the biggest plot twists I ever read, and that was after, you know, that big plot twist. I was like, oh my goodness, because I was so captivated by the first part of that, and then when the big, you know, reveal happened, I couldn't believe it. But then everything still made sense up into that, and as the story progresses, you go back and you see it from the other perspective, and it was great. And so just, you know, keeping the readers engaged enough to where when it does happen, they're surprised, and then they just want to keep reading because they want to know how it came to that point.
So this panel also talks about the title is Dark and Twisty. So we're talking about plot twists, but I also want to know, like, if the darkest book you read, the most emotionally weighted book you read that you really wanted to pack a punch to the reader, which of your books would you say that is? We'll start with Eden.
I suppose maybe the first one, The House, because that one, I guess, is about a family. So while you've got sort of the the plot where, you know, they've got something's in the house and there's somebody after them, you know, you've also kind of got the dynamic of the family and the pressure on a relationship and all that kind of stuff. So that's probably my darkest one. I mean, Zetan, I think, in certainly comparison to that, is very light. Yeah, you know, easy reading.
Oh, sure. Yeah, before bed.
So yeah, I think The House is probably the most like emotional, maybe, where I sort of go into actual, the dynamic of the family and just all that kind of stuff. So yeah, probably that one is the darkest. Plus, they're in a haunted house, so
yeah. How about you, Anne?
I think it has to be my most recent one, Money Creek, which is, it turns out, I think I took a little bit of a risk in writing this main character who's an active addict. And so during the course of the book, we have somebody who makes really bad choices and her world gets more and more unmanageable and chaotic. And you know, I think my tone and my voice keep things from being too somber, but there's no question it's a dark journey. And actually the reaction I've been getting to the book, like on Goodreads and Amazon, is interesting because people are finding it challenging. to read about a character like that. So I don't know if that's going to turn out to be a good thing. It's a good kind of challenge, or the kind that leaves people not reading the book. We'll see. But that's the initial reaction it's getting.
We're going to go with good kind of challenge.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
their 4 or 5 star reviews are just saying, you know, wow, that was not easy. Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Rad?
I think that for me, dark equals dark characters and angst. I mean, I'm a romance writer primarily, or pretty much totally. And for me, I think of the 2 books that probably have the darkest character journey are Love's Melody Lost, which is one of the first ones I've written, and Secrets in the Stone, both of which are pretty much Gothic romances. So I think in keeping with that kind of story, they would be the darker ones.
Sam.
I think I would say my latest, Broken Rain, Daughter of No One, kind of sets up, I guess, sort of the tone of the trilogy, and that world has some archaic laws, at least archaic to us, in terms of, you know, punishing women who give birth out of wedlock as one of the examples. But Broken Rain kind of dives into not just the main characters and their motivations and their past, but how the people in their lives influence the way things have gone for those characters, and the not necessarily, you know, pleasant reasons their family members or their friends have for doing what they're doing, and, you know, revealing those perhaps darker motivations for carrying out the laws or carrying out certain things within the story. So Broken Rain sort of dives into that a little bit more about why things are the way they are, and sort of opens the characters' eyes up to the dark past of their own lives and the lives of their family members.
I think that one also has a really great reveal at the end. I mean, I don't know if I call it a plot twist like you said, but it is like an oh my God moment. So yeah, I think that's probably my favorite book of yours.
Thank you.
So yeah, so people should run out and buy it. Okay, well, that is all the time we have for our dark and twisty plot. I want to thank my lovely panelists for taking part, including the missed Maggie Cummings. May she get back on the internet soon. So thank you for tuning in, everyone, and please come on back for the author readings, I believe, that are next, and then we have another panel after that where someone you know will be moderating again. See you later, everybody.
Thank
Nice
you.
job, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.